So what is the best tenant profile or the best type of tenants for buy-to-let? That's the question we've been asked today for our question of the day. It's quite an interesting one actually, because we've had a mix of tenant profiles across the years that I've been investing in property since 2005. We've worked with housing benefit tenants, students, social housing, professionals, across the whole type of strategies as well. So mainstream kind of buy-to-let through to HMOs and a whole host of others. And when it comes down to kind of tenant type, I've found that it's not one type of tenant that's going to be kind of the best and beats hands down every single kind of other tenant profile for different criteria or different categories. What we found is that we've kind of built a bit of a matrix now that we can kind of compare property types, tenant types to try and really understand which features as of right now for our kind of portfolio and family kind of plans in our own portfolio matches what we're looking to achieve. And that covers everything from professional tenants through to service accommodation and all of the different kind of tenant profiles in between. Now, as of right now, our preferred kind of tenant type, if it were, or we did have a strategy, let's say, in terms of the next kind of properties we're adding to our portfolio, it tends to be professional tenants. And there's a couple of reasons for that, which is relevant to this snapshot in time for us personally, but there's certainly other things to kind of consider for your own portfolio. So I'll go through kind of some context as to maybe what we're looking for with professional tenants and why we think they're currently favourable for ourselves. So two main reasons, but kind of a third as well plays into this. So the first one is access to finance. Now I'm not a mortgage broker, so I can't kind of give financial advice. That's for somebody, qualified broker or bank, for you to kind of speak to really understand the lending scape. But when it comes to financing for our own portfolio, what we found is that raising finance on properties, for example, social housing, is much more difficult than professional tenants, and also it's more difficult than if you're raising financing for kind of student tenants as well. Student, professional, even kind of council tenants to an extent. We found funding for those types of properties a bit more mainstream, a little bit more cost effective, whereas social housing as a comparison tends to be more expensive, limited lenders, limited options in terms of what products are out there, and sometimes it might mean going to kind of commercial finance, which is more expensive or has been more expensive for us in the past. So our preference for that tends to look at more mainstream strategies, and professional tenants is one of those. As I mentioned, students can also be another one of those. The second reason is management. So when we're buying properties now, we use letting agents to manage the properties wholly. We've done self-management of our properties in the past, and it's very difficult. It's very time consuming. There's lots of legislation that's kind of coming out all of the time, and it makes sense to work with a professional in that space, a professional letting agent that has the experience and the understanding of the local market. We found really excels. It gets properties filled quicker, it finds the right type of tenants, and it just removes that constant kind of battle to try and kind of manage and maintain and run properties. If you're self-managing, can be very time consuming and difficult. So absolutely recommend a letting agent, but I'd also recommend you using a letting agent that has experience in the niche that you are looking to work with. So if that's student tenants, for example, then make sure you're working with a student focused letting agent in that town or city. For us, professional tenants gives us more access to potential letting agents in our areas, so we've just got more choice to kind of choose from. So it's just our preference again to maybe focus in our current kind of stage of our portfolio on the professional kind of market. And then the third reason tends to be longevity of tenant profile. Now again, there are other tenant profiles that have very good longevity. Housing benefit tenants we found has been fantastic for longevity. We've had tenants in properties for many years where they've been local to schools or local to family members. They don't want to move, they're happy, they want to kind of stay where they are currently kind of have their contacts and friends and family, and it's just a great way for you to have maybe a 2 or 3 bedroom type house that's suitable for a long-term kind of family let. That can be great longevity. Same for professional tenants. We found if we have the right type of location for a property, maybe it's even a city centre apartment or possibly a 2 or 3 bedroom type house again, and that could be a fantastic long-term tenant profile if it's maintained and looked after right, purely because the location is such that it's near local workplaces, amenities, schools, things like that, means that you're going to attract a tenant for a longer period of time. Student tenants tend to be more cyclical, but there are benefits to student tenants by being kind of cyclical. you tend to get, although a turnover of tenants possibly yearly, depending on the type of property and the location or the city or the town that it's in and the university it's attached to. What you do have though is very often an oversupply of demand. There's lots of tenants usually looking for properties at the same period of time. So if you have a good location and a good quality of property, letting it isn't an issue, but you do have that turnover of tenants. So again, making sure you have a good quality letting agent in place is very important when it comes to student tenants. So we would still do student tenants, social housing property, housing benefit type tenants. We'd look at the whole range of tenant profiles. I don't have a potential issue with any particular one tenant profile. We have that mix in our existing portfolio, but what we also try and do is make sure we constantly kind of rebalance our portfolio over the years. So as of right now, our preferred tenant profile is professional tenants, but that could absolutely change in 12 months time or 2 years time or 5 years time, depending on what our current portfolio makeup kind of typically looks like. So I hope that helps. Hope that gives some context as maybe things to consider with your tenant profile for your buy to let. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. I'd be happy to help. All the best. Bye.